Amazing.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I think this is an exciting opportunity for everyone who's looking to invest. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with the Remax Wealth Builders team there in Calgary. And I was super surprised as to what type of interest they were getting from Toronto investors investing in Calgary. So I had a lot of questions and from my own clients about investing in Toronto. And because of the prices here in Toronto, a lot of them couldn't invest, although they wanted to, especially if they've already owned a home. So they were looking outside of Toronto, and even still, those prices outside of the GTA were still fairly high. So they were looking outside of the province. But Calgary has always been under my radar. I've heard great things about that. And after seeing your presentation and understanding more of why you got into this business and why you started to sell in Calgary, I'm now convinced. So I wanted to share all that information that I got from you guys and share that with my clientele and hopefully help someone along the way. So I just want to introduce everyone to Kyle, and yeah, let's take it from there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Dovigi, and I'm really excited to be chatting with you all today. I've partnered with Marlon, and Remax Wealth Builders is actually like a sister or sub brokerage under Remax Ultimate. So we are all partners. We're all in this together. Now, I have normally specialized in the GTA, selling pre-construction there up until about 2020, 2021. That's when the huge opportunity in Calgary really came across my desk. And I'm an investor myself. I own 7 different properties across Canada, 5 in the GTA and 2 in Calgary, and really took a look at the opportunity there and the amazing affordability and incredibly strong rents that you get there. And I really jumped on that opportunity, transitioning my entire business over to Calgary. Nowadays, 99.9% of the pre-construction properties I'm selling are out west, even though I'm still located in Toronto, working with investors just like yourself and across Canada to take advantage of this opportunity.
Wow, congratulations. That's yeah, what you've done in a short period of time is great. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if we wanted to dive a little bit more into it, I'll share my screen quickly here. And you can say that this is an exciting partnership. I am with Remax Wealth Builders, and we have doubled down on that Calgary opportunity. We have sold over 1,000 pre-construction properties there, worth over $300 million. But we personally invest. We put our money where our mouth is. Our team has bought over 20 pre-construction properties in Calgary. I think the most out of any other real estate team or brokerage in Canada. So showing how much we actually believe in this.
Absolutely.
And I didn't come from real estate. I started in 2018, started really doing it full time in 2021. I used to work with the lottery. I used to run Lotto 649 and Lotto Max draws across Canada. And there I learned that about 1/3 of Canadians were looking to fund their retirement by winning the lottery. That's a crazy statistic considering the odds of winning are ones in tens of millions. It's not going to happen for most people. So now myself and just like Marlon, we work with our investors to help you grow and build wealth by investing in real estate and building generational wealth by doing that. And I've been successful. I've been a real estate investor for over 10 years. I bought my first property in 2012, and I've grown that into a multi-million-dollar portfolio of 7 properties worth nearly $5 million today. And I'm all about transparency. This is what that actually looks like. This is my portfolio. Like I mentioned, I've got the first 5 are in Toronto. I prefer pre-construction property investing, and the last 2 that I bought have been in Calgary. And I'm continuing to invest in Calgary as well, because that's where I think the huge opportunity is. I still like the GTA long term, but Calgary for me, really, I wanted to diversify, wanted to add on to my portfolio and take advantage of really the bull run that's happening there, the momentum and amazing things happening in the city.
Yeah, and this is a great slide because a lot of investors or people getting into investment and buying property, even for themselves and for their own use, look at real estate as an investment in such a short term. So it's really good to see a slide that's looking at 30 years out, but also looking at a pretty um, consistent growth rate of 3%, you know.
Yeah, and that's incredibly conservative. Conservative for GTA, conservative for Calgary. I am happy with 3% price growth because of the leverage effect. I'm only putting down 20% at closing, but that 3% is appreciation on the entire purchase price. So I'm getting a 15% return on the actual money that I have down at 3% price growth. I've done well above that, like 20 to 25% compounded annually on my real estate portfolio. But I don't want to put those numbers out there. I want to be incredibly conservative for people and things I think that are absolutely achievable.
Also, like what you can see here is that you're able to do that for almost every 3 years around. I see in 2016, 18, 19, 20, you're pretty aggressive in your purchases, but we're looking on average every 2 years you're buying a property. Now, this might not be so possible for people who are buying in Toronto with fixed incomes and with the prices here in Toronto to see that that your portfolio multiplies so quickly. It's amazing. So how is that different in Calgary in today's market?
Yeah,
Is there the
and this
opportunity?
absolutely, and this is where it is achievable by just about everyone to build a real estate portfolio. I was doing this while I was working a regular job. Now, this was my previous career. Up until about number 6, East Hills Crossing, I had a regular day job. I didn't move into real estate and running my own business until much more recently. But that's the thing. You don't need 7 properties. You don't need 5 properties. One property can be life changing for you over the long term. You know, like Marlon said, we're looking at 30 years. At the end of those 30 years, the mortgage is paid off. It'll be cash flowing because there's no mortgage on it. You know, and hopefully it's gone up significantly in that time as well. So just buying a single property for anyone can be an actual retirement fund. You don't need to get into massive portfolios to do that. A single one can be life changing. Now, what's not included here is actually the purchase prices. Where number one, Carnaby condos, I paid 258,000. Riverside Square, two bedroom, I bought for 355,000. Line 5 was 450,000. These are prices that are pretty much still achievable in Calgary. You know, and Calgary used to be more expensive than Toronto 20, 25 years ago. So that's where there's huge potential for price growth, you know, and now you see like a lot of these properties have doubled in value since I've bought them. Not just the deposit that I put down, the actual value for them. And
Absolutely.
that's where Calgary's the opportunity where you can get in easily for under $500,000. You know, what can you do in the GTA, right?
Exactly. And I feel that in the GTA and a lot of investors here in Toronto, we're looking at investment in such a short term because they weren't cash flowing. You can't really hold a property that you're paying into for the long term because, you know, with today's prices and everything increasing, you just can't really take on that burden. So, you know, one, it needs to be at a good price, and two, it really needs to cash flow. So that you could see, you know, your month to month cash flow being positive as well as your capital gains every year in order to multiply that quickly.
No, exactly. And that was the biggest issue with properties in the GTA, that they were not cash flowing. At 2% mortgage rates, they were still negative 1,000 a month. So that's not a situation that I can recommend for a lot of people because you're taking significant money from your pocket to fund that real estate. You're banking entirely on depreciation. Whereas Calgary, on day one, you should be cash flow positive. You know, that's assuming interest rates come down a little bit and rents continue to go up a little bit. And we can get into more detail, or we're going to get into more detail about what the actual performance has been for kind of the last year or two.
Yeah,
Now,
no, I appreciate that.
this is comparing Toronto to Calgary last year. And we'll focus more on condos because those are the affordable options in both markets. In Calgary, you've seen condos, you know, the benchmark is about 313,000. The majority of the inventory there is 20 years old plus. There hadn't been significant investment there in quite a long time. So the price is quite low. Compare that to Toronto, where the benchmark, that's the average price is $682,000. It's over double. But price, you know, just because it's cheap doesn't necessarily make it good, right? We want to have a return on our investment. And taking a look at the returns, the benchmark in Toronto down 1.3%. In many areas in the GTA and Ontario, down significantly more than that, double digits in a lot of cases. Take a look at Calgary now. Benchmark is actually up 19% as of the January statistics. This slide hasn't been updated yet. That's with interest rates, between 5 and 6.5% in the worst real estate market that Canada's seen in about 30 years. This is mind blowing, right? And myself and my clients, and hopefully, Marlon and his clients are going to be able to take advantage of this opportunity now as well. And jumping into it a little bit more, like this is the performance for condos. We're seeing record numbers of sales over the last year. New listings have taken a nosedive. Sales to new listing ratios are over 100% in some cases. They're selling more inventory that's even coming to the market. Months of supply, under 2 months, which means a heavy seller's market. In days on market, you're kind of around 30 days on average. And you can see that benchmark trend has continued to go up over the last 2 years. And here's something mind-blowing for all of you. Calgary just recaptured the highs for condos that were set back in 2014, a decade ago. They just came back to them. So there was never a bubble in Calgary like you can argue that there was in some of the other markets. And it's still incredibly affordable compared to every other major market. Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, heck, all of Ontario.
So that brings up a good point. I was going to mention this potential bubble in Calgary. I've been in the business for 20 years, and there was always someone calling out the sky's falling. And, for a good 15 years, we haven't seen prices drop so much. But in the condo market, where I'm not seeing here in the Calgary, your graphs in the Calgary market, we've seen this for many of those years in Toronto. So I've seen prices go up and down in the condo market here in Toronto, and haven't seen these results look like this at all. So
absolutely. And full disclosure, condo prices actually came down from 2015 in Calgary to about 2019, 2020, because oil prices crashed. There was massive consolidation in the oil and gas industry. People fled, leaving mainly to Ontario or, greener pastures. That damage was done. And in the latest run up in oil and gas prices, there haven't been any new oil sands projects announced. There haven't really been new ventures. There hasn't been money pouring into the oil sands, and there probably won't be. The growth and expansion that's happening in Calgary is related to other industries outside of oil and gas. Like technology, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about this as well. Green initiatives, finance, real estate, all this other stuff that is more sustainable going forward. And this has been one of the huge drivers of population growth. Alberta has seen the most number of people ever moving to the province, really over the last about year and a half. Majority of that is coming from international immigration, but a big chunk is interprovincial migration. Had you guys heard on the radio that Alberta is calling? They were actually doing an advertising campaign. And Marlon, you had said that this is probably one of the most successful advertising campaigns that they had the entire year.
I mean, aside from the cold, there are so many other reasons why people are migrating to Calgary. You have lower taxes, higher incomes in many different professions, and lower cost of living altogether. So that means a lot more disposable income. So you can enjoy life, although it's fairly cold in Calgary.
And it is cold, but you'll learn how to deal with it, right? Like I'm from Northern Ontario, from Sudbury. It's cold. You adjust. But what it does have is, it's been voted one of the most livable cities in North America time and time again. You have a really good living situation because it's affordable. You're paid very well, very, very low income, one of the lowest business taxes across Canada. But it's also a very educated workforce. You're situated very close to the Rocky Mountains, so you have amazing skiing, recreation, tons of green space, biking trails, national parks. But again, that low cost of living is what's attracting many, many people, especially those immigrants, because for $500,000, what can you buy in the GTA pre-construction anymore? I can get you a studio in Hamilton, or I can get you a 3-bedroom townhome in Calgary. For a lot of people, it's a no-brainer, especially if you haven't established yourself in Canada yet.
So you mentioned that they're attracting a lot more different types of businesses. We're seeing an increase in small businesses, which is a big indicator of a thriving economy. What type of businesses do you find are moving in there? Is it all across all industries?
Yeah, you are seeing significant diversification, and that's where strong economic growth that you're seeing, on this chart, not just in the last kind of 2 years, but also expected to lead into 2024 as well. You're attracting everyone, because if one business is doing well, there are third party people that need to support that business, and then they need support, and they need bankers and hospitals, and it really starts to snowball. But what I'm really seeing is tech. That's what gets me excited, is a lot of technology companies. Calgary now has over 400 startups in Calgary, and you're starting to see those grow up into unicorns, into billion-dollar valuation companies. And then when these founders, get rich, they like to reinvest in their friends and families' businesses. They can be venture capitalists at this point, and then that really starts to snowball. So you're seeing a lot of that happening. And one of the main reasons is Calgary has a very, very educated workforce in science, technology, education, mathematics. That's what employers continue to reference about why they want to move their operations there and set up shop. And it's continually been one of the most attractive cities for workers, but also for businesses, because of a very low tax environment and low cost environment as well. Office space. Do not buy office space in downtown Calgary. There's a 28 to about 30% vacancy right now. That's starting to go down. It's trending in the right direction, but it means there's a lot of options, and affordability for office space, especially in downtown Calgary, it's half of what it is in Toronto. It's a third of what it is in Vancouver. So if you're looking to set up a new company, an operation, it's a very, very low cost environment for you to do that. And you're seeing a lot of the top companies in the world doing that. Like Amazon has tripled down on Calgary. They have the regular distribution center. We know all of those. They have a bulky warehouse distribution center, the first one ever in Canada. And they have Amazon Web Services that they're building, only the second one that's going to be put in Canada. The other one is in Montreal, and this one's going in Calgary. So they're investing billions of dollars, hundreds, if not thousands of jobs being added to the economy there. Company like TELUS, they have their headquarters. They just built a 60-story tower in downtown Calgary. They're hiring nearly 10,000 people across Alberta, $17 billion investment. WestJet made Calgary their international hub for all of their international connecting flights. Calgary has only one of 4 international airports in Canada, and they're investing a ton of money into that airport and expanding it as well. And then a ton of tech companies. A couple of these are actually big Indian tech companies that have set up shop in Calgary. But what gets me excited is that they're expanding operations. That's the continued trend. The experiment is a success when they're saying, okay, this is working. We want to double down and continue to add on to our workforces. And especially when you look at other companies, setting up in Canada is very cost effective, especially when you compare it to, say, San Francisco, when you compare it to many parts of Europe. You can pay people significantly less in Canada with the exchange rate and everything. Plus, healthcare is covered in Canada too. So it makes it a very low cost operating environment, but very high outputting as well. So many, many companies are doing that, including the banks, IBM, like RBC. So that's what really gets me excited, is the economy continuing to go. And that's the sustainable part of it. I didn't mention one company related to oil and gas. Yes, they're going to continue to pump the oil from the ground where they can. That allows them to have no provincial sales tax. There's just GST, no land transfer taxes, 0. There's no caps on development charges out there because there are no development charges. So that's where your closing costs in Toronto, the GTA, could easily be 40, 50, 60,000. Calgary, $2,000. So that alone is a huge attraction. That's literally the deposit on another unit in Calgary because of this low cost business environment. So it helps big businesses, it helps small businesses, it helps people like us that want to invest in real estate too.
Wow, that's amazing. The lack of closing costs and putting it into perspective that could be another deposit for another unit. you know.
And it literally is. It literally is 40,000 that can get you into another pre-construction property, a good one, 2 bed, 2 bath, parking, locker, and taxes.
Now, when someone here in Toronto is buying an investment, they don't have the ability for most part, for the most investors, to buy more than one because they have to hold that burden, that negative cash flow, and until it starts to appreciate. Let's go through a little bit more about how are we seeing investors cash flowing from day one? Like, how is that possible when prices are increasing? Is rents increasing just the same or faster? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And rents have actually increased double digits now for about the last 3 years all across Calgary, because for anything built within about the last year, vacancy is less than 1%. That means that it is absolutely a landlord market. By the time a property gets listed, it's normally rented. A lot of people charge application fees as well, landlords. They have the ability to weed out those people that aren't even serious. That would be like 25 bucks, but still, like, how many people would actually pay that to apply to rent a unit? So it is really night and day. Now, the biggest thing is prices are low, but the rent that you're getting is very, very high. If you were to buy, say, a pre-construction property today, say at Orson Condos as an example, this is a more suburban project outside of the core, about 20, 25 minutes. 2 bed, 2 bath runs about 400 about 420,000. That unit today would probably rent for about 2,100 a month. So if you were to close on it today, yeah, it wouldn't cash flow. Try to close on any property today with interest rates like 5.5 to 6.5%, it just doesn't work. But that's where every single economist, everyone is expecting interest rates will come down. So buying pre-construction allows that to happen. And we're not talking 2-3%. We're talking like 4.5%. Something that is absolutely realistic in the next 2 years. But you're also going to have rents that continue to appreciate as well. So with rents going up 10, 20%, even at 5% price growth over the next couple of years, you're adding on a couple $100 every single month onto the rent that you can expect when you close on the property. And then that's how you're going to get a cash flow positive property at closing.
now I have two questions for you, and I'm sure this is coming across people's heads as we're speaking. If maybe this is just a Toronto mindset, but I saw a stat that Calgary's household income was actually higher than in Toronto's.
Yep. The average
So
household income, quite a bit higher.
quite a bit higher, right? And the cost of living there is much lower. So why aren't they just buying the property? Like, why are they renting?
Some people always choose to rent. And especially when you have such huge population growth, naturally, you're just going to rent for a little while before you establish roots, find your job, find where you want to live, a school for your kids, that sort of stuff. When you immediately move to a city, you don't normally buy. You rent for a little while and stabilize yourself. And that's definitely, what we're seeing. And I think more and more people will continue to buy, but now that's going to keep increasing the prices as well.
Yeah. And in Toronto, another question here. In Toronto, we're seeing that it's just a supply issue. This is where prices have increased so much. And, as long as we're doing, or the government is doing things to increase demand for properties, they're not fixing the issue with prices and affordability. So we're at a supply crisis here in Toronto. With so much development happening in Calgary, are they going to oversupply at one point?
That's always a risk. But what we're seeing is the environment there cannot keep up with construction. Just like in the GTA, we had the record number of cranes, I think, in all of North America or even the world. And yet we still weren't keeping up. That's happening in Calgary too. There's, just like the GTA, huge shortages of skilled labor in construction. And you're going to continue to run out of land, right? You're going to have to go further and further and further out of the core. So if you want something close to downtown, that's just going to be always more desirable and is going to continue to go up in value then. We can continue to expand in Ontario, across the GTA, but how long do you want it to take to drive to downtown? We're hitting that limit now between what's reasonable in Calgary. So yes, they can continue to grow, continue to build, but Think of the GTA 20 years ago that kind of ran out of easily developed land that's really close to downtown Toronto. And that exact same situation is replicating itself in Calgary today.
Yeah, and at the infancy of the investment boom in real estate for Toronto and the GTA, we saw the units change significantly, going from 1,000 square foot units to now we're seeing under 300 square feet for some of these units. In Calgary, are people mostly investing in? What do the units look like? What's the mix of product offerings when a new condo comes up?
Yeah, and it is a big mix still. Calgary is definitely trending towards that trend as well, where unit sizes are shrinking down. They were significantly larger back in the day, but nowadays it's just getting too expensive to build those large units. People are more focused on affordability. They want to be able to buy a decent size 2 bedroom, 2 bath than a 1,200 one that's going to have crazy condo fees. So the trend is definitely towards smaller units. Now, there's definitely two different segments in the market that I like to explain to clients. One is your more suburban locations. This is where that development's happening around the outside edges of the city. Land is easily developed. Normally, these are mid-rise, 4 to 6 stories. They can be built normally in kind of 2 to 3 years sort of time frame, but we do have closings further out than that. And the floor plans, what I like about them is they're typically square boxes, which is the most efficient layout. All of the space is usable. You don't have bowling alley sort of units like you do in Toronto because you need to squish so many in, but you still want a window.
Yeah.
No funky triangles, no round shapes. So the floor plans are amazing. A 650 square foot 2 bedroom sounds small, but when it's all completely usable space, it lives larger than like a 750 poorly designed unit. So those have been very, very attractive. You get a lot of rent for them. Price point for something like a 1 bedroom, you're around 350,000 today, including your taxes, parking, and locker. Most 2 bed, 2 bath units, you'll be about 650 square feet. And that is normally kind of 380 up to about 420,000 nowadays. Again, all in. If you go to the downtown core, and that's we have a brand new project that just launched called Lincoln. And I'll share my screen again quickly. I can talk about it as it's up. This is the highest end building in Calgary in terms of finishing, in terms of amenities, the luxurious nature of it. This would be something that would rival like Nobu in downtown Toronto. Very, very high end. This is closing in 2028, has a 3-year rental guarantee from the developer as well, the highest rental guarantee available in Canada. So high that with all the incentives, they make them cash flow positive, even at a 5.75% mortgage rate. This building has like 20
Today.
different. Is that?
Ready to do better today.
Exactly. So being conservative, they're cash flow positive at that. So it has over 20 amenities like a swimming pool, bowling alley, has a podcast studio, gym. And this one's going to be unreal. Now, 1 bedrooms are around like the 500 to 600,000 mark, but the 2 bed, 2 bath units, you're about 620 up to about 720, including parking, locker, and taxes. This is unbeatable value. It's amazing.
What's that work out usually on average per square foot for a high-end building like this?
Well, that would be about 800 to 900 a square foot for the 2 bedrooms, which is really, really good value. It's less than half the price of a comparable downtown Toronto project. And it's pretty comparable as well to other similar buildings that have launched in the downtown core for Calgary as well. Truman had Imperia. That was another fantastic high-end building, sold pretty much the same price point. There's only a couple of units still available there as well. They had gallery condos. That was the quickest selling process ever for a downtown project in Calgary. The entire building sold out in a week. So this has been very attractive for people, especially in the GTA, who are used to buying, the premium assets in amazing locations like Yorkville and downtown Toronto, that they want the best of the best. And this would be something for those people, because it's not going to get better than a project like Lincoln.
Now, with costs in Calgary being so much lower to live there, do they see that reflect in their maintenance fees as well when comparing to Toronto?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lincoln has maintenance fees of 56 cents a square foot
Wow.
starting. And that's on the high end. Most projects we're seeing about 45 to about 55 cents a square foot. Now, many of the projects, they're pretty bare bones in terms of amenities. There's not 24-hour concierge, which is very, very common in most Toronto and GTA buildings. So that keeps the cost down as well. For a project like Lincoln, though, it's higher compared to other projects, but it's because of the amenity package and it's a 2028 closing as well. So they're figuring costs are going to continue to go up a little bit over the construction period too.
Now, in a city like Toronto, where land is scarce, we're having some issues with the parkings as they're building condos higher and higher. With Calgary being so vast at this point, is there any issues with that? Do the condos sell with locker and parking as they used to in
In
Toronto?
in the more suburban locations, parking and locker come with every unit typically, because in those areas, it is pretty car dependent. In downtown, typically now we're seeing parking is reserved just for 2-bedroom and larger units. So similar to the GTA now, we're getting that because it's so expensive to build a space. It doesn't make sense for builders to, build it for every single unit. So at Lincoln, it's about a 50,000 value cost. I've seen it even higher than that. But you get discounts based on a different deposit structure. If you put down 20%, you get free parking and locker as well. So a good way to keep your cost structure down even more.
Now, in the past, I've seen Toronto, and there was so much life in Toronto. Things changed during the pandemic, and hopefully things are coming back. And I'm seeing already a change to urbanization once again. But in Calgary, do you find that most people want that suburban life, or do you find that people are looking in the downtown core? And what's really driving that move, if so?
Yeah, and that's where we have to look at how Calgary kind of got set up historically. And normally, you used to be able to drive, have your detached house 10 minutes from downtown. So at 5 o'clock, the downtown core would kind of clear out. They're still battling with that a little bit, trying to get the vibrancy downtown. The downtown core, there's still challenges, but just south of the downtown core, in the Beltline, that's where all the happening restaurants are. 17th Avenue is called the Red Mile. That's where during Calgary Flame games, where all the activity and excitement is. And we're finding, especially the younger population, they're much more focused on condo living. They don't want to take care of a house. They don't want to take care of a car. They want simplicity and ease of life, and they're really gravitating towards that downtown urban lifestyle. We heard this during COVID. People moved out to all these small cities and everything like that, and they hate it because
Yeah.
there's no culture, no art, no vibrancy, nothing is happening. So in the suburban areas, it wouldn't be that bad, but you're not going to get the active urban environment like you would in a downtown core. So it's very lifestyle based. If you're a family, have kids, trend still to move out to a more suburban location. You need the house or you need more space. If you're young, if you want that urban environment, you're living in the downtown core.
Amazing. And now I know we only had you for about 30 minutes and we're already at that time. But I do have another question for you. We're talking about the differences between downtown and suburban, and I see that you've invested in Calgary yourself and you're very familiar with the different areas. What's your next investment to add to your portfolio? Is it going to be a suburban property? Is it going to be downtown? Do we have access to all types of properties in both categories?
Absolutely. And that's where I focus on pre-construction in Calgary. That means condos, suburban, middle of the road, downtown, as well as townhomes. I have semi-detached properties, detached with legal basement units in them. Whatever your client's looking for, I have, products available for them. In terms of what I'm investing in, I have to close on 4 units in the next 18 months. I'm stressed. I got to get my mortgages. I got to get the closing costs lined up. 2 of them are in Toronto, so I'm going to pay over 100,000 in closing costs for those. So I need to get those lined up. But if the right opportunity comes by, I really like Lincoln. in downtown. This is going to be one of the last opportunities you get to invest in the downtown core of a major market at numbers that make sense. So I'm still thinking about picking up a unit there. But value plays as well. I really like some of the projects that Truman is going to have coming up as well. There's one in Northwest in Carrington, one in East called Highgate. I think these are really attractive opportunities as well. So
Now,
I'm tempted by everything, but unfortunately I can't afford to buy everything, and I still have to get mortgages too.
I know how that feels. Now you mentioned you just mentioned, sorry, one more question before I let
Of
you
course,
off.
no problem.
You mentioned that there was you had some semi-detaches with legal basements. Now, is renting a basement a market there in Calgary with
Huge market. Yeah.
there's a huge market? Because I
Very,
know,
very common. Now, these aren't your crappy basement apartments like you typically think of in Toronto. These are purpose built with separate entrances and closed units. So essentially, it's a duplex that you're buying into.
now I gravitate to that because I know in Toronto the only way to, potentially cash flow from day one is having multiple units in one property. What's the investment like in comparison when we were looking at Calgary? Are you cash flowing a lot higher in those situations? And
Yes,
what is
typically. Yeah, because for like semi-detached nowadays, you're probably about the 670 mark, and then to add the legal basement unit is typically about another 75,000. So you're kind of in like the mid sevens. But today, if you were to close on it, you'd probably get 3,800 to 4,000 a month in rent for that investment.
wow, amazing.
So it's a lot more rent because that basement unit typically rents for about $1,400 to $1,600 a month right now. And that really juices your returns. Like that is the best possible investment you could make. If you're buying a semi, you have to add the basement unit to it. The only downside is normally houses and townhomes close in about 18 months. It's a much, much quicker build cycle. Whereas for condos, I have closings in, 2025, 26, 27, even as far as 2028.
Yeah, so you definitely want to diversify to see those funds.
Yeah, timing those closings is important, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this webinar as much as I did. There was a lot more information in this webinar than I was first introduced by you guys, and I really appreciate that. I really hope everyone felt they've gained some value from this, and hopefully we can do this another time, another for other people who are interested.
Yeah, absolutely. You can tell I'm passionate about Calgary. I talk about it every single day. I like to view myself as an expert, and I want to work with, you and your clients. If you have any questions about how the process works, about, mortgage qualification, anything like that, absolutely reach out to myself or Marlon. We'll be happy to chat with all of you because we want to find the best possible returns. They don't need to be limited to the Toronto or GTA. Let's look across Canada and see how we can, make the best return possible.
All right, sounds good. Kyle, thank you so much. And yeah, we will be speaking soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Marlon. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye for now.